Welcome to the Transaction Listing tutorial video. In this video, I'll show you how to look up past transactions and interpret all of the available transaction information. Once you've logged into the control panel, you'll see the Transaction Listing interface on the left side. Notice that it shows two dates, from and to. You'll use these to indicate the date range of transactions you want to find. Both dates will always default to today's date. If they show a different date, you'll want to check your computer's date and time settings to make sure they're correct. Let's choose a date range. We'll put from January 1st, 2009 to March 24th, 2009. Ignore the advanced checkbox for now, since we'll be covering that in another video. Click the Go button and the transaction report will pop up showing a list of all transactions during that date range. You'll see at the top it says there may be a 5 to 15 minute delay before transactions appear. Keep that in mind when you're trying to view a transaction that was recently run. If it doesn't show up here, give it a few minutes and try again. Under that, you'll see that it lists your business name and gateway ID number. Then we've got three buttons: Print Listing, Explanation of Codes, and Close Window. If you want to print what you're looking at, clicking on Print Listing will bring up your printing options. If I click Explanation of Codes, a new window will pop up which shows a short description of the different codes in the transaction listing. I'll explain these, but remember you can click on that button if you need a reminder. And clicking on Close Window will close the transaction listing and take you back to the main control panel. If there are more than one page of transactions, you'll use these navigation buttons to change pages. The transaction listing will show you 100 transactions per page. Under that, you'll see a Go button, and next to it it says Download Dataset in CSV format. You'll use this tool to download the information you're looking at into a file that you can open with Excel. You can also download the information in XML format for those that prefer to use XML. Over to the right, you'll see Estimated Open Batch Total. Clicking this will show you the current total of any transactions that are in the current batch. Now we get down to the actual transactions. First, we see the time and date of the transaction. Transaction times are always shown in Mountain Time. Next is the XID, which is an abbreviation for Transaction ID. Every transaction is assigned a unique XID. If I click on the XID number, it will show me more information about the transaction. Click on Get Detail and you'll see all of the available information, including billing and shipping address, and information about what was actually purchased. To get back to the transaction listing, click on Go Back, then click Go Back again. Next you'll see PXID and CXID, which are short for Parent XID and Child XID. I'll be covering these in a separate video. Then we have the action, which will always be one of four things: order, void, credit, or force. An action of order means you have simply charged the customer's credit card, debit card, or checking account. I'll be covering the three other actions in another video. The status column shows you whether the transaction was okay or if it failed. Next is the AVS column. AVS is short for Address Verification System. Anytime you run a credit card transaction, an AVS response is sent back from the card issuing bank, letting you know if the address submitted with the transaction matches what they have on file. There are a lot of different AVS response codes, and they differ depending on what processing network your merchant account provider uses. To get a list of all the responses for each network, click on the Explanation of Codes button at the top of the page. The next column is CVV, which stands for Card Verification Value. The CVV number is the three-digit number found on the back of most credit and debit cards. If this number was used in the transaction, there will be a response code in this column sent back by the card issuing bank, similar to the AVS code. Again, for a list of those codes, click the Explanation of Codes button. Next is the Type column, which tells you the type of payment method your customer used. This column will display an icon of the card type if a credit or debit card was used, or it will say EFT if a check was used. EFT stands for Electronic Funds Transfer. The last four column will show you the last four digits of the credit card, debit card, or checking account number that was used. The next column shows what was entered in the first name field on the transaction, followed by the last name column. The next column is the authorization number. Every transaction that is approved is given a unique authorization number by the issuing bank. Next is the batch number. Any day you have transactions, you'll also have a batch settlement. Throughout the day, when transactions are processed, they are held in a batch. Then, once per day, depending upon the batch settlement time you've chosen in your account settings, the batch will settle. This means the information from all of the transactions is sent to your merchant account provider so they can move the money into your checking account. The next column is the transaction amount. The next column is for recurring transactions. I'll be covering recurring billings in another video. The last column is the options column. This column will have a Go button next to every transaction. If I click it, I'll be taken to the transaction options page. I'll be covering these options in another video. And that's your basic overview of the transaction listing.